Boom. We live. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Today's video is, as the title suggests, talking about my second DMT experience and Tommy Robinson. The second DMT experience is in light of the video I made like last week or so about my first DMT experience and how these altered states of consciousness, I think, give a reasonable insight into the more than meets the eye-ness of human existence. So I guess I'll just explain a little bit about it right now. Dimethyltryptamine is a psychoactive compound that's present it's abundant in nature, and I do believe is endogenous to human brain activity. It may be what allows us to experience sleep, perhaps. I'm no neuroscientist, but we're talking about when we sleep, fascinatingly, we're talking about experiencing a reality that is not of this physical world. Hello, Adam. Salaam alaikum. Back, brother. Yes, my man. How you doing? I wanted to start doing lives every Friday night, but this weekend it was too hectic, too busy, and so I couldn't. But inshallah, my intention moving forward is to every Friday night, work pending to get these on a standard time, maybe Friday night, 9 p.m. British Standard Time, and just start the live, start the dialogue going. So I'll jump straight into the DMT, which isn't something I want to clarify with people, because when I released my first DMT experience onto the YouTube channel, number one, it's not something I've done recently. It's something I did several years ago in my youth. And it allowed me to embrace Islam, not entirely, but the reason why I say that is because when you believe in things like angels, now, if you've never seen an angel and you need evidence, then that's going to be I think that's going to be a sticking point for a kind of materialistic, secular, really rational, kind of uptight type person. But for me, having explored altered states of consciousness, something that could be equivalent to near death experiences when your soul, your ruh, I think it might be pronounced, maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, Adam, let me know, your ruh, your soul, which is actually taken, Allah takes it from you every night when you sleep. So your body, your physical body, can exist separate to the soul. And so that's kind of similar what's happening in these experiences. Your soul is taken, your body is still alive, but you're no longer conscious, and you're experiencing realms that are completely new and different and peculiar to this realm, and your soul returns. And so what I'm trying to say is that although I don't advocate these psychoactive compounds, I don't promote them, I don't condone them. In Islam, to protect our intellect, Islam came to protect many things, as you'll know, good sir. We're talking about lineage. That's why it's important that we know who our father is. We carry our father's name. There to protect us against the ills of society. That's why things are haram, like mind-changing substances, alcohol and cannabis and psychedelics. And also to protect wealth. This is again why riba, interest, gambling, these things again are haram. It's there to support and to protect. And the soul is taken care of, and Allah decides whether or not to send your soul back to your body. Absolutely. So alhamdulillah, we woke another day on God's green earth. And these experiences, like say, people saw some comments really mentioning that, people go crazy on these things. And something that I wanted to say as well, I'm obviously not crazy. It's just a rational, normal dude who experienced these things back in the day. Now, the first one was a long time ago. The second DMT experience was actually just before I embraced Islam. I believe at that point I may have been sort of playing around with Christianity. And there's a few things I took from this experience. So DMT is an ego dissolving, soul extracting, life transformative experience. It's a kit, like I say, it's really a death of kinds. And death for many people, they're apprehensive, they're anxious about these things. And a few things happened when I went into this kind of DMT world, when you exit your body and you're catapulted into an alternate reality, so to speak. Number one, I realized that we're already dead. And this is in line, I believe, with the Islamic and Quranic narratives. Allah, who is outside of time and space, really for him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beginning and the end is the same. Allah already, the horn has already blown because that's within time, and Allah is outside of time. So the beginning and the end are really one, which is a really confusing, kind of mind-blowing philosophical concept, that the creator is outside of time and space. And so for him, our lives, that's why, although we have free will, there's a kind of certain deterministic nature to human beings, because although we do have free will to choose, Allah already knows what we will choose, because he knows us better than we know ourselves, and because also our lives have already finished. For Allah almost like, imagine back in the day, yeah, some people are going to be too young for this, and I'm just about on that precipice. In the technology of back in the day, there used to be video cassettes, right? And so before DVD, now with a DVD or an MP3, like it's always starts at the beginning. But back in the day, you had to rewind the tapes back to the start. And the reason why I mention this is almost like a film. If time and space is like a movie, Allah can just pretty much go in at any point. It's not chronological. It's not in, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not, the time is not going in the same way as for us. So you can pretty much go from the first chapter to the second chapter to the last chapter. Time is disabled forever in paradise, absolutely outside of time and space, a beautiful resting place for those whose soul is in a good state. So that was the first thing. I realized, like, I'm already dead, which by definition I already am, because I will cease to exist. So it's a guarantee. But also outside time and space, there is Allah. So that was one thing. Another thing was, at the time, I had been following this. Excuse me, I've got an itchy nose. I'd been following this kind of path to what ultimately led to me embracing Islam, but it was something along the lines of, I'd accepted the existence of Jesus Christ at this point, but it was more in a Christian context. And I realized in this experience, I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm on the right lines here. And the final thing that I learned really was, who's in the chat? A couple more people come into the chat. I know we got our man Adam. He was on the last live. Got a couple more people. Let yourselves be known. Big up your good selves. Big up your good selves. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Glad to catch you on live. Likewise, good sir. May God give perfect health to you. Likewise to everybody. May we have a continued blessed Ramadan. And may we make the end of it. May we make Eid, because there's no guarantees, like we've been talking about. Allah can take our soul at any point. Any questions in the chat, I'm more than happy to answer. My main thing was to talk about my second and final DMT experience, which really allowed me to embrace Islam. So for me, there's barriers to entry within Islam. Sometimes people have misconceptions, misunderstandings, they have prejudice, they have hate towards Islam based on media, based on propaganda. People, they have girlfriends, they're committing zina, and they don't want to let go of their lust and their desire. They might love going out partying, alcohol, drugs. There's all these barriers in their family, what will their family think, will their family disown. There's so many barriers to entry when you're following your own path. Often people just like to follow the crowd and fit in. Now, the reason why I mentioned DMT is, for me, my Jahiliyyah days, my pre-Shahada days, I was really big on psychedelics. I was a bit of a hippie type guy. And for me, it was a huge yes to pray every day, multiple times a day for the rest of my life. I knew that was a big responsibility, but I felt I could handle it. For me, accepting that I was never going to take psychedelics again, I was never going to go into these alternate realities to explore these terrains, that was a huge thing for me. And I really was looking about, is what are all the different opinions? Is there some way that I can sort of wiggle my way in to keep doing these psychedelics? I know generally people see them as kind of like crazy drugs, but it's like anything. Some people, if they are strong in body and mind, if they prepare, it's like a marathon. I'm running the London Marathon, inshallah, on April 21st. I'll put a link at some point in this YouTube channel to anybody if they want to make small donations, small sadaqah to allow us to help homeless people in the UK. That's what I'm running the marathon for. But my point is that the marathon, if somebody's not prepared, if somebody's not physically fit, if somebody's not got the appropriate liquid, water, if they've got the right mindset, they've got their podcast in their ears, they're ready to go, they've not carved up the night before, then yeah, they're going to fall apart. They're not going to be able to finish. They're going to break down during the marathon. The same way with psychedelics, you have to fortify your mind. You have to accept that you're going to be uncomfortable and you've got to grind on through. And so these drugs are not something that are like, again, it's propaganda when it comes to like LSD, jumping off buildings, people breaking down. Some people might have a susceptibility to not being able to deal with the breakdown of their reality, the dissolving of their natural or normal boundaries that they experience. But for me, fortunately, alhamdulillah, I was able to ride the wave. Same thing as surfing, talking of waves. Like if you're not an experienced surfer, you're going to drown. If you get me? But if you're the Donny, you're riding the wave, you're looking cool. You're looking like, whoa, this guy, like he's riding. So you can ride those psychedelic waves and you can realize that, like I say, there's much more than meets the eye. And just before I start responding to some of these great comments, thanks so much to all of your 100s, your love hearts, your celebrations, your all this kind of stuff, which is pretty cool seeing just ding, 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 just pop up in the chat there. But my point is that when I exited that experience, number one thing that I saw like the pyramids. And inshallah, I'm going to be moving to Egypt. And this is completely unrelated, but in my experience, I did see like the big Sphinx and the Egyptian pyramids and this kind of like ancient vibe that I was going through. Anyway, but my point is I exited being like, I need to prepare for the next experience. My intention was to do a third. But the problem was I exited and I never did the third because I realized that the ultimate DMT experience is going to be death, and this is what Islam is. It's preparing us for a good death. So yeah, let us know in the chat. I'm going to answer a few of these questions here because that's the essence of Alive, is connecting with the good people. So grow your hair, Ahi. It's sunnah to have long hair up to your shoulders like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I am aware of that. But and I did have long hair back in the day, but I've got the old widow's peak, my man. And I've got the sunnah beard, I've got the fistful here. And I look, at the end of the day, I'm a married man. So you got to do what keep the wife happy. That's sunnah. I'll tell you that. You got to make sure you're looking after the wife. And her, like myself, I am due a trim. I need to clean my face up and shave the hair off. So I appreciate the suggestion, although I doubt it will be happening anytime soon. They say people see jinns on DMT. Well, yes, again, that's why I mentioned the DMT. It's not to glorify it or condone it, and it's something that happened way before I accepted Islam. But the reason why I think it's something reasonable to talk about is because it allows one to understand that, like I say, there's more than meets the eye. I'm not saying that the DMT realms are the unseen, but you can relate to an unseen world, because the reality we're experiencing right now is that at the same time, there's like, this is a slither of reality, and at the same time coexisting, there's also so many other doors that can be opened and realities that we can be experiencing. And so the unseen, the angels and the jinn, it's like, this isn't some weird and bizarre thing about like aliens or like, how can you believe in beings that you can't see. It's like, well, because I literally saw and have communicated with beings that I don't usually see anyway. Now, again, to most people that sounds crazy, but I think the concept of angels and jinn to the secular materialistic mind is pretty far out there. So indeed, they say people see jinns on DMT. Likely, who knows? Yes, Islam is the backbone of society. Indeed, I mean, this is what I put on Tommy Robinson on the my second DMT experience in Tommy Robinson, because he's just done he just basically called out Mohammed Hijab, who many people know. He's got over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, a big guy on the old Speaker's Corner, which is a fantastic and uniquely English place, may I say. The freedom of speech there is beautiful, and it's ultimately dominated by Muslims because there's obviously a fair sort of evangelical Christian cohort there as well. But Muslims are very much a predominant part of Speaker's Corner, and that's for good reason, because we're really quite confident to speak about these things at hand. Tommy is a real clout chaser, mate. Yeah, and the good person here just said non-Muslims don't know they are seeing jinns and shaitan on DMT. They think it's something else. If only they knew, they would know Islam is real. Well, like I say, obviously this is the thing with jinn. I think often sometimes we jump too quickly to the. I'll get on to Tommy Robinson in a second, but we jump too quickly to almost. We think of jinn, I think, and we associate it with negativity. You know, almost like jinn possession, like having like man come into your house and like, you know, reciting Surah Al-Baqarah just to like, you know, cleanse the spirit, so to speak, or, you know, people, you know, that's why you don't want to be like getting naked all the time, and you need to be doing your dua and your prayers like before you get intimate and all this kind of stuff. But bearing in mind that jinn, there's just like human beings, there's just as many pious and evil human beings as there are, you know, pious and evil jinn. And so when you are potentially and reasonably communicating with jinn within these experiences, they could be, but then again, the type of jinn that are going to be there are most likely the ones that could be rebellious, I guess, because the pious jinn, they're just cracking on looking to get to Akhirah, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They're just looking right, they're thinking of the afterlife. But what I'm trying to say is that for me, although there was a presence of beings, for a lack of a better term, it wasn't necessarily a negative thing. At the end of my second experience, I kind of came back into my body, and there was a sense of darkness, and it was almost like I had the choice of re-exiting my soul, leaving my body again and going somewhere, or I was half in my body, I could get up and go back to my friends, and I didn't get a good vibe from it, so I got up and I left out of there because I felt like I was being taken back into a dark place. So yeah, it could well be jinn, basically. But Tommy is a real clout chaser, mate. Yeah, I mean, the way he was speaking about Wa'udu I mean, it was, I don't even want to say it, but you all know what is often thrown at the noble messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the marriage to Aisha and what people start calling out him to be. And it's very short-sighted, because what he's basically saying is that Islam promotes child marriage and rape and abuse and exploitation. It's like, come on, man. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure Tommy Robinson himself declares that he has like Muslim friends, like he grew up in a predominantly Muslim area. It's like, what? So you're not around just like normal Muslim families and seeing how that they exist? If anything, to be honest, where is it? Just here. Something that I could literally read is Today's Problems, Tomorrow's Solutions, the Future Structure of Muslim Societies. I was literally reading it last night, this little bit here. I might actually just read it now. But before I do that, Tommy Robinson you're absolutely right, absolute clout chaser. And he's like, Mohammed Hijab, you're an absolute nobody, mate. I mean, he's got over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I'm not saying that makes him a somebody. Obviously, at the end of the day, we're going to be put in front of Allah, and he knows what's in our hearts, and he knows what we do in public and in private. But, you know, having YouTube views and subscribers doesn't make you somebody. But at the same time, like, that would be a good and proper discussion. Tommy Robinson, the same thing as Douglas Murray, to speak to people like Mohammed Hijab, like Jordan Peterson did, to be fair, would be a fantastic way, I think, to kind of break bread and come together and talk. But I don't think that they want that. You know, backwards caveman society, that's what Tommy Robinson's claiming Islam's all about. And it's just a real shame, because I'm going to read this, because based on you talking about Islam being the backbone of society, I thought it would be worthwhile reading something I was reading last night. Since time immemorial, The family relationship has been of strategic importance to society. So since day dot, since back in the day, since before recorded history was, the most foundational part of a society is the family. And let's look how the family functions in Islam compared to the non-Muslim world. I mean, just even our country here in England, like there's so many problems that you can see out there, and it's like who in their right mind in the Islamic community is promoting child marriage or rape. Like, come on guys, it's hilarious. The family, it is a fundamental structure linking the individual with larger social structures. It is the means of eliciting from the individual his necessary contributions. The earliest moral and ethical writings suggest that a society loses its integrity and strength if people fail in their family obligations. Now, again, you can see that all over the place in our great country of England. Nursing homes, old people's homes, not looking after your family, the individualistic nature, the individualism of society means that people just care about themselves. Their money's their money, and there's just a real lack of wanting to help other people. The other social institution which has deeply influenced the functional aspects of the family is religion. And without religion, there's no hierarchy, there's no structure. And that's really the big problem. The family constitutes the dominant social institution through which persons and groups inherit their religious, social class, and cultural identities. The term family has been used quite indiscriminately, referring to various social groups. Although there seems to be a lack of a universally accepted definition of this term, it can be described as a social unit in which the members are united by bond of marriage or blood. In its simplest form, it consists of husband, wife, and their unmarried children. Although he does go on to say there that something that is a big issue is the kind of the nuclear family as the kind of smallest sort of group of those people. But obviously back in the day, and you see this more again with traditional society. Well, what do I mean traditional? I mean like basically Muslim people or traditionally religious people in this country of England. Like when people have their cousins, their aunties, their uncles, their grandparents, everybody's living together. Is there not a beauty in that? Like, should we not be living with our extended family and supporting one another and helping one another, helping the old people, sharing the responsibility of bearing the children? Why it seems like it's been made more difficult. Like if you have just a unit of a mother and a father and the children, surely it's easier to have the grandparents, the cousins, the aunties, the uncles all together. And that's something that's being massively stripped away from our culture and society. It's the individualization, the individualistic nature of this society is something that is incredibly worrying and sad. And I guess I'm just talking off the top of my head. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this. Something that is an absolute ill to our society in this day and age. We're not getting married and we're watching porn. I mean, if you stop watching porn and get married, I can tell you from personal experience that life drastically improves because now you have a real relationship with a real human who has actually your best interest at heart. And now you're moving away from addiction, right? The adrenaline, the endorphins, the dopamine that's released into your brain when you're watching illicit things on the internet is so unnatural and so worrying. It perverts your life in all sorts of ways. And I mean, it's related to the family because if you haven't got good structure, if you haven't got strong family values, if you haven't got a leader of the family being the father, the husband, then, I mean, for example, I was literally raised on porn. Now, that sounds crazy to people, but you know, when it comes to like magazines, right? Porn magazines, I literally got given these by my parents. Like it was a norm. It's not like people being protected from these things in a religious context, although that's what I'm going to do for my children and that's what I think is best. That's like seen almost as like no sex before marriage, or it's almost like, whoa, chill out a little bit. That's the vibe that's given, I think, from the more liberal, irreligious people. It's just a normal and kind of dare I say, encouraged aspect to society, like giving your children condoms, for example, to prepare them for safe sex. It's an acceptance that children are going to get up to no good, so to speak, and engage in sexual activity. So we need to best prepare them for that by giving them, what do they call it? Like condoms and the words. If you know the word, let me know. What do you call it when you have like the pill, the implant, like condoms? It's like stuff that prevents people from getting pregnant. I can't remember the word right now. But this also links back into what Tommy Robinson was saying, and this is like the key like driver behind people who are shouting out Islam from my brief experience on YouTube in recent times, is people are just calling out the marriage of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Aisha radiallahu anha. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And something we need to bear in mind, right? Like I can only speak about myself, but how I grew up, and this is just me being authentic here. People get children are sexually active from a very young age. Now that's not to say that I see them as adults, because obviously in this society in England, to be an adult you have to be 18. But I can speak from like direct personal experience with my friends, how I grew up in England in the early part of the 21st century. Children with other children are doing it before they're even teenagers. So what Islam does is says, right, well, we realize that as soon as somebody hits puberty, their mind changes. They're no longer children in the same sense. Like a 7-year-old is not the same as a 12-year-old. A 12-year-old is now growing up. And we do not condone any kind of sexual activity that's not inside the sanctity of marriage. And so the whole conversation is so like sinister at its heart. And I really wish that Tommy Robinson would have a good open dialogue, like a podcast or something with, like, say, Douglas Murray with Paul Williams, Tommy Robinson with Muhammad Hijab. These would be real steps forward in allowing people to understand the true beauty and tranquility of Islam, because what people are thinking about straight away is abusing women, condoning child marriage and rape, wa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, allowing, people don't really like the idea of the patriarchy, of like strong. This is the thing, right? With the West's history on like women's rights, for example, that's why the feminism movements come in, because it's almost like, say, an elastic band. It's a reaction to the past where there has been ills and atrocities and injustice. And so that's where we are now, feminism. But Islam, like, let's say my wife's not a feminist. Why does she need to be a feminist? Why does she want to work? I don't get why women are so keen to work. Like, I accept a responsibility to have to work because that's what's been ordained for me. Work is worship. You have a responsibility, look after your family. But at the end of the day, I'm just so baffled, as my wife is, why people would want to fight so hard to go and enter a workplace where they still have the hierarchy, they still have the patriarchy, but just now it's your boss, it's just some other man rather than your husband. So I don't get it, man. Got 2 people in the chat, so let me know who is still here, who's listening, what you're thinking. You're obviously listening to me, so alhamdulillah, there's obviously a small amount of benefit coming from this. The main thing I want to talk about was my second DMT experience, which just allowed me to come to the realization that the ultimate DMT experience is death. Adam, you've been listening to me for almost 30 minutes, bro. You are an absolute legend. May Allah reward you. Any questions you have for me? If I remember correctly, I'm maybe going wrong. You're definitely in either Egypt or Saudi based on the last live stream. And those are 2 places that I am very, very keen to visit. But like I say, the main thing I wanted to talk about was the second DMT experience I had, where I basically had the realization that the best way to listening from Morocco, get in, son. Morocco was, assalamu alaikum. Morocco was certainly one of the places I was looking at, and I will visit as well. My current, right, let's talk about Hijra, right? I'm talking to two brothers who are already in Muslim countries, Muslim lands. And Morocco is certainly one of the places that I'm going to. My intention now, currently residing in Manchester, England, is I'm going to go with my wife and my son, my family. We're going to go to Egypt, Cairo, inshallah, make Umrah, and check out Saudi for a couple of weeks, and then come back to England if we're going to have a second child, inshallah, and then go to Morocco as well. So Morocco, Egypt, Saudi are kind of the big three, I think, to get a bit of the Islamic world in our lives. But let me know, the grade 101, what the situation is. Whereabouts are you in Morocco? How kind of secular, how westernized and secular is it where you are? Because although I love this country, there's a lot to be proud of. Beautiful. That's literally where I was looking at. Obviously, right on the northern tip, not far from a overseas colony, one of the British overseas territories of Gibraltar, which is on the southern tip of Spain. What was there, like 16 miles or something between? Gibraltar. That's the one, bro. So yeah, how did you come onto this live stream? How did you see it? Did it just come up on your feed? Are you subscribed to the channel? What's like the main thing that has intrigued you? Yeah, I go shopping. Oh, really? Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful place to be, but when I was looking at living there, it's pretty spenny. Algorithms, bro. This is it, man. I guess what I can say to you right now, right, is the main reason why I've done this channel, and I'm doing these live streams, and I'm releasing these videos, and I'm speaking to the people, having a dialogue. By the way, is your first language English? What languages do you speak? The reason I'm doing this is because having been so blessed that Allah allowed me to embrace Islam, and Allah allowed me to get married to a beautiful Muslim woman and have a beautiful Muslim child. Alhamdulillah. Okay, I was just making sure that I wasn't just like speaking at 100 miles an hour. I speak Arabic and English. Arabic and English, this is the dream. This is why Hijra for me is so important, because I want my son to be able to have obviously as a new Muslim, reciting the Quran, early days. Obviously, I lead my family in prayer. I lead my extended family in prayer for Ramadan, mashallah. But, the amount of Quran that I know and my fluency in reading is very slow. And so I want my son, his connection with the Quran to be very deep and meaningful. And I fear that, Arabic I see as like a key. Arabic is, an example I'll give, good folk, is Arabic is sight. Imagine being in this world blind. You're literally a blind man, right? You've got a walking stick, you've got a cane, right? You need support to cross the road. But you can still smell. You still smell the beautiful scent of food, biryani, of chocolate. You have taste. You can taste the chocolate cake. You still have sense and feel. You can still hold the hand of your wife. You've got 4 senses, but you're lacking sight. To me, that's like Arabic in Islam. Yes, you can feel the beauty of the ummah. Yes, you can smell the great smell of the shahada. I don't know, like you have so much, but you're missing out on ultimately probably one of the greatest senses, which is sight, vision. And so I'm hoping that just very easily and seamlessly I can raise my children, my son currently, in a way that is going to allow him to absorb Arabic just as natively and fluently as English. So Arabic's incredibly important, and I think that the thing is with this country is England's going down the drain. The United Kingdom, although a proud Brit, is just going down the drain. It's going down the drain. The cost of living crisis, cost of living's going up, safety's going down. I think there's more and more tensions in this society at the moment. This is what I was going to say, right, is having been blessed to embrace Islam, to have tranquility and peace enter my life, to have a wife and a child, to no longer partake in any of the Jahiliyyah things from back in the day, and just have that security to go from being in loads of debt to go to having loads of savings. And then for people to be calling Islam out as all the things that I know it's not, the opposite of that, is really why I stand up. And I think that we all have an obligation, a responsibility as a community, as individual Muslims, to stand up and say, this is what we stand for, this is what Islam is, rather than, you foolish man calling out things like child marriage and rape. The beautiful thing about the Sharia, as you guys know, is the flexibility and the practical ethics, meaning that what is good for one place and one time is always not good for another place and another time. So that's really the ignorance and the lack of understanding. I can just see my wife's just entered the room. We've got a little baby. My little Bubba is just about to go to sleep. So I'm going to end the live stream, but I really appreciate everybody coming on, jumping on the live stream, liking it, and being subscribed to the channel, and just caring about what I'm having to say. I think the dialogue's really important, because I'm calling you guys to follow suit. Yes, dawah is an obligation in Islam, but it's tackling against the misunderstandings, the misrepresentations of Islam that people are doing. And as individuals, if we all stand up and do this, and the best way to stand up for Islam is to practice Islam. The best way to fight against Jahiliyyah is to be knowledgeable. So, mashallah, alhamdulillah, your case, you need me, country rather than I think Egypt's a good country. I know every place has a dialect, but Egypt is a pretty good place for learning, and that's inshallah where we're going to be going. The UK has an island empire. Indeed, it does. The Moroccan Arabic isn't classical. Indeed. Moroccan Arabic is Arabic, but more French. Yeah, absolutely. MashaAllah. Oh man, I wanted to discuss Tommy Robinson. I'll briefly discuss Tommy Robinson. Am I allowed to briefly discuss Tommy Robinson? Okay. Omar, indeed. Maybe next time. Let me 3 minutes, and I'll cut it off at 40 minutes because it's just been me rambling now for that time. But Tommy Robinson, I think he touches on really. So what he talks about, right? The issue with Tommy Robinson is he conflates and relates, for example, the issue we had in this country of grooming gangs. Take Rochdale. I'm not too far from Rochdale myself right now. And he conflates that with Islam because, and I've spoken about this in past videos, take Rochdale, for example. I believe there was approximately 11 men convicted of grooming young children in Rochdale. And of the 11, it was 10 Pakistani people who were British Pakistani people and one Afghani asylum seeker. And so the issue there is that because you have Pakistanis and Afghanis being prosecuted for absolutely abhorrent, disgusting, and reprehensible crimes, he's now seeing that as a representation of Islam. But he knows, and this is why he is a clout. He is just an absolute trying to claim clout. And you know what it's like. You need to get views. You need to get attention. He contradicts himself absolutely, because at the end of the day, the very essence of, for example, Islam, this is the whole thing where it's conflated child marriage, rape, grooming gangs, without realizing that in Islam, alhamdulillah, my dignified courtship with my wife, I met her brothers before I met her. We didn't touch each other until after we were married. This is old school Victorian conservative traditional values vibe. This is something that doesn't exist in the West anymore. We do not touch women. Even in the workplace, I've got this awkward thing now. I have to say, I don't touch women. Trying to hug me or shake my hand out of respect. I just say I'm not a very tactile person. I don't feel comfortable touching you, and therefore, just respect that and don't do it. But the reason we don't do that is as a protection, to protect from any kind of deviant behavior. And so clearly and obviously to anyone in their right mind, if the grooming gangs, for example, the Pakistani and Afghani fellas, who should, in my opinion, if you hold firm to the Sharia as well, they should have very severe punishments. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's to me, that's justice. If you rape somebody or a group of people, there should be serious punishment for that. Not just going to prison for a couple of years, which, bear in mind, prison drains the resources of a society. I mean, something that's worth noting as well, if you go back to the Arabian Peninsula, is They didn't have prison systems. This isn't a modern society. So what deterrents can you put in place that aren't also, how much does it cost to prop up prisoners? This is now a different, oh wait, we've got a fella come in. John Bennett, good man. Are you still listening, John? So right, let me get to some of the questions here, because on one hand, he says Muslims behead adulterers. Then he says we commit adultery with kids. So this is the thing, right? As I've said already, I will calm down. Thank you for the suggestion, good man. Came down on a flying donkey. It's not a donkey. So again, John Bennett, I doubt, this is the big issue, I think, with a lot of people, is their knowledge is incredibly limited. Because what we have to do, like I say earlier on in the feed, people have to understand that something foundational to understanding Islam is the Arabic language. Now, an issue again with this country, England, is that most people just speak one language. And if I can quickly say this before I get on to Mr. Bennett's comments, is one of the blessings I've had in my life is, fortunately, I was able to allow me to quickly move. Stay on the stream, yo. It's just that my wife's putting my son to bed, so I need to go somewhere. I'm gonna go to the back. I'm gonna get into my car. I've now got 7 people listening. I'm getting onto a really important point. I'm just gonna go. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna walk around the block because we're coming onto some really important points. Maida. That's my little cousin.
She knows you when you're coming.
She can hear me, ma.
Yeah, my.
Right. I'm going to have peace and quiet now. Let me... Stay with me, folks. 7 people. Get in. And also, the beauty of, actually, not just having Muslims on the chat, so we can have a bit of a better conversation. Right. Here I am. Let's get into it. What was I saying? Right, so yeah, the flying donkey thing is something people in this country, England, right? The blessing that I had growing up was I received, mashallah, a scholarship to attend one of the top independent private boarding schools in this great country of England, equivalent to where all the prime ministers went, right? Where David Cameron, Boris Johnson, where these people go. They went to Eton College. Now, we used to compete against Eton College in athletics and football and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's a similar type of school. A lot of the people I went to school with, their brothers went to Eton, for example, right? So I went to this big... It's like Buckingham Palace, right? There's a big manor house, right? This is how the boarding school systems, how the private school system works. Where like Rishi Sunak went to, where did he go to? Not Westminster. He went to some school near Southampton. What was the name of the old capital in like the Viking times? I can't remember right now. Anyway, the people go to these big, expensive boarding schools. Now, the reason why I mention that is because what I noticed that these schools cost approximately £50,000 a year to attend, right? For your child to go there. Now, most people don't earn that, let alone have that spare to put into your child's education. Now, the reason I'm mentioning is this, because all of my friends now, I've got my best man in Cayman Islands, right? My best man in Thailand. My best man traveling around China and South Africa. My best man in Switzerland, right? I've got friends who are international all over the world. Now, what's a common thread amongst all these people is that they speak multiple languages. Same thing as the aristocratic types, the royal types, the intellectual, forward-thinking types, the people that have just had decent parents or they're multicultural, so their child has more than one language. One of the issues with our country, our arrogance and our ignorance means that we speak just English. Now, the reason why I mention this is because something that's really important is when you are talking about Islam with no Arabic knowledge, you're basically trying to describe something. You're trying to describe something you can't even see, based on our early analogy of without Arabic, within the fold of Islam, with the religion of Islam, you're basically blind. So John Bennett, clearly my vibe from this good man is that he's not Muslim and he might be a little bit apprehensive about what Islam represents. And that's kind of part of what I guess I'm doing here is saying that Islam, let's talk about the true beauty and understanding about it. So came down on a flying donkey. That will be a reference, of course, to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his night journey, and married a child. Whoa, he said don't jail grooming gangs. Absolutely didn't say that. So that's a misrepresentation. Watch the video back. What I said is that back in the day, there was no prison. So, for example, in the Arabian Peninsula, 1400 years ago, there was no prison systems. And what I'm saying is that prison is a massive drain on the resources of society. We pay to prop people up in prison. Now, if you have harsher penalties and greater deterrence, then people don't commit the crimes in the first place. Something that we need to bear in mind is that when you look at the safest, this is completely objective and completely secular, what's the word I'm looking for? Secular judgments or views, or if you type into Google the safest countries in the world. Now, these are reports, right? Secular reports. These are Muslim places. You don't get robbed or burgled in these places because there's severe punishments. Now, what I'm saying is, without feeding into the extreme narrative of Islam, to me, it makes logical sense that people should be scared to commit crimes because the penalties are high. And so all I was saying is that I wasn't saying the opposite of what you're saying, Mr. John Bennett. He said don't jail the grooming gangs. No, I'm saying that jail is not enough. These grooming gang people, not only should I don't even want to say what I think. I mean, it sounds extreme when you start talking about the death penalty, but at the end of the day, the reason why I would feel comfortable living in a country with the death penalty is because I would never come close, as long as I wasn't framed, as long as I wasn't like, there's been I know there are examples, of course, where people do make mistakes. And then the worst thing, of course, is when somebody is killed for a crime they didn't commit. Now, that is really sad, of course. But because I would never come close to, like I say, I don't even touch women. So how could I come close to committing these types of crimes? So opposite to what you were saying, I think that there should be more severe punishments for people who do these awful crimes, obviously. Now, so I don't know why you thought I said that. So John Bennett, do you condemn America? The crime rate in Muslim countries is low. This is the truth, right? Like I say, imagine, like I live in Manchester. I grew up, I went to university in London. Now, the issues in Manchester and London around theft, knife crime, just ultimate safety. Like I grew up in the countryside in England, right? And we didn't have to lock our door growing up. And it's a beauty to not have to lock your door because there's no issue. Like to leave your car open, right? To go to the shop, right? To go to the corner shop or to go to the supermarket and leave your key in the car. If you lose something, you leave, you lose your phone or your laptop or your wallet, and then you have absolute confidence that it's going to be returned to you. These things don't exist in this country. So it's not so much a comparison rather than idealization. What would we want as the ideal situation in our country? The crime rate in Muslim countries is low, not going to lie. That's obvious. That's like say that the stats are out on that. The problem is this country is that government does not talk about the cover-up grooming gangs, also honor killings, also marrying cousins, also nobody addresses the problems. Yeah, I mean, again, we agree. I think that the government, the UK government, is a weak government. I think that the UK government is absolutely doesn't have the interest of the everyday people at heart because it's an elitist, oligarchical system that doesn't care for the people that are struggling to pay their bills because of the cost of living crisis. In fact, it's pretty much the elite's fault that we even have a cost of living crisis. And so, yeah, the government is a joke. I agree with that. But this is nothing to do with Islam. This is the differentiation that needs to be made. Grooming gangs, right, is nothing to do with Islam. Because these grooming gangs happen to be of Pakistani heritage or Afghani heritage, it's like that means nothing. Like you have English Christians and English atheists. So like if an English person, it's almost like there's a grooming gang, right, and they're English lads. And now it's like, this is a reason that atheism is ridiculous, or this is a reason that Christianity is ridiculous because these English lads have done something. So I think we're conflating. The practice of Islam says that you don't touch, like for me, I have my wife, my mother-in-law, my mother, and my grandmother. There's 4 women that I even have physical contact with because that's the rules of Islam. I don't hug friends. I don't even have female friends. I don't hug at work. I don't shake women's hands. I don't come anywhere near. And obviously within marriage, adultery is like, obviously that breaks down the contract of marriage. So like these guys who are, bearing in mind all these grooming gangs, if you look into it, most people haven't even looked into this, guys. These grooming gangs, how did they groom these young children? With drugs and alcohol. What's haram in Islam? Drugs and alcohol. So how can these people be representing something when they're doing the complete opposite? Illicit sexual activity and using drugs and alcohol to seduce underage girls. Like, this is absolutely anti-Islam. So people, I don't see how people can have it so conflated in their heads. Money laundering. You've just said money laundering. We're talking about the UK. There's money laundering in like all countries. That's the issue with politics and corruption. Tommy the Milk Sheikh Robinson's Irish Heritage Council Estate Demographic Group is the least integrated group in England, lowest GCSEs, lowest doctors, highest crime rates, highest benefits. That is true. This is also a huge misunderstanding about, for example, don't get me wrong, I'm all on strong borders. I'm all on strong penalties for crimes. But if you look at the council housing situation in this country, you're talking 90%. I work in housing, 90% of social gaffs, housing association homes go to white English people. So, and if you look, yeah, you're absolutely right. The biggest drain on society are usually the people who are drinking, smoking, doing drugs, draining off the system, benefits. Who were the first people to die when COVID hit? The frontliners. It's Muslim nurses, Muslim doctors. We have to sort of have things in fair comparison. Like, yes, we all agree. And this is something that I want to call all Muslims to do as well, because that's something I've noticed on this channel. When it's almost so obvious to us that it feels like not natural to do it, but to condemn like these grooming gangs that don't represent Islam, to condemn the kind of intimidation tactics of these kind of fringe terror groups, because that's obviously not Islam. So I think that the more that the Muslim community come together to stand beside the English folk and say, this is reprehensible, this is not us, is going to be something really powerful. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But then the other issue is also that gives the Muslims a bad name is that the Muslim families, the Muslim immigrants, the Muslim asylum seekers have come to this country, and their children, their daddy might be the imam, their family might have pious people amongst them. But the issue is when Muhammad Ali, or I don't know, whatever, when Muhammad Ali is selling drugs, which reminds me of where I was raised, back in the day when I used to buy drugs, all of the drug dealers were Muslim. I was thinking Abs, Ali, etc. Never put 2 and 2 together, but when it's Muslim named people are doing knife crime, violence in the prison system, selling drugs, again, that's not doing Islam any favors. But ultimately, the issue is what they're doing is they're mimicking the low socioeconomic environments, the kind of dog-eat-dog vibe of these impoverished areas, and they're just selling drugs to survive, or maybe they think it's cool driving fast cars, all this kind of stuff. And what they're doing is they're mimicking the West, not Islam. So that's something that needs to be bared in mind. You live in the Northwest, look at every single council estate, they're dominated by descendants of Irish immigrants. I don't want to be pointing no fingers, to be honest. Like, I think one thing that's a problem is this kind of ethnic grouping. I think that's something that's powerful, hopefully, about me and my story and my communication with the online community, is that I'm English heritage, like my DNA is of this island, but my faith, my submission, my life, my intention is for Allah, it's for God, it's for the creator of the heavens and the earth. It's to live a good, moral, peaceful life. And I don't see them being conflated in any way, but obviously it triggers and brings to the surface, you know, what people think truly about Islam and about me being a traitor and, you know, betraying the country's values. But I would argue, and I've said it before, that the ultimate betrayal of this country are the English people who have rejected God, rejected morality, rejected any kind of community and traditional values, and are getting caught up in their own desires, their own nafs, their own do whatever they want to do, sell drugs, individualistic society. And so ultimately, I think that the way I'm living my life, charity, prayer, family, submission, try my best to be humble, is way more in line with the Christian roots in this country than how most people are living now. So let me have a quick read. Yeah, the Northwest is a beautiful place to live. Look, at the end of the day, council estates have got their own problems, but I think it's just fair to look at everything in a reasonable light. No problem against yourself or Muslim people. You seem like a nice guy. Well, thank you, Mr. John Bennett. I appreciate that, because ultimately, at the end of the day, I understand the issues that people have. Like, this is why I'm here saying that I think that the grooming gangs, I don't think it's unreasonable to chop off the whatever the crimes you commit. If you make a crime, right, let me get onto this Sharia, right, the chopping off of the hand. I remember the barbaric nature of the Sharia I remember being about 5-6 years old, and I remember my dad talking to me about this. But the thing you need to understand, and does this not make sense to the people? Let me ask you this. If you got to steal to feed your child, you don't get your hand cut off. This is, like, say, the flexible relative nature of the Sharia. If you're starving, or your child is in need, or, like, say, there's poverty, this is reasonable grounds, because ultimately the society has done you wrong. It's not the individuals at the bottom of the pecking order who have done something wrong. It's the people at the top that are taking the mickey, and so your stealing is just a product of that. Now, the issue lies with a functioning and fair society, like, as we spoke about, the highest safety nations in the world are going to be places like Qatar, for example. Now, if somebody steals in that environment where there's no poverty, there's no need to steal, it's just purely malevolent, it's purely evil, it's purely predatory, then there needs to be a huge deterrent to let people know that that's not acceptable. So if for no reason, and you've got to be an adult, you've got to be sound mind, again, it's all these other things, you steal, then you are just an absolute stain on society. And to have your hand chopped off is, I don't see that as being some awful, terrible thing. So I know that sounds probably really extreme to some people, but the issue is at hand that most people, they hear something about Islam and the Muslims and they don't fully understand. Like, for example, marrying. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a incredibly intelligent person in the relation to the Deen of Al-Islam. But what I will tell you is that embracing Islam, the experience I've had, the tranquility, the benefit to my life, like I say, going from debt, which is probably what most people in council houses, let's quickly talk about council house in a sec. The people in the council houses are buying drugs, smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, scratching lottery cards, they're gambling, they're doing these things that are just pinning them down. So they're choosing their own, they're the biggest part of their own demise. And the issue is that Islam, when you look at it, the beauty, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from NYC, big up your good self. Would love to go to New York one day. It's on the bucket list. My wife has obviously means to get Umrah done. That's obviously the main plan. But I think New York City is a beautiful place, and there's a great Muslim community there. And I think you guys were probably harder hit by obviously what happened, the catastrophe of 9/11, and a lot of these issues in relation to the Muslim community. But what was I going to say? I was going to talk about me that's what it was. Having all the benefits in my life from embracing Islam, having a caring, loving wife, a child, an extended family, exiting all of my loans and interest, going from debt to savings, going from parties and drugs to prayer and masajid, and then coming on and just having my own life, like being Muslim for a couple of years now, getting to grips with everything, feeling confident. But then something happened at work which made me realize the ignorance that is present in this country. I did my first video on the YouTube, and then I got the backlash partly from people who are on Jahiliyyah. And this is where I realized that I came across things that, like, I already knew about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the marriages to his wives. May Allah be pleased with them. But my main point is that the marriage between Muhammad and Aisha has not made me like relinquish my faith, be like, oh my God, this is an absolute abomination. It's awful. It's terrible. Muhammad, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, is a pedophile, is a warlord. He's this and that and the other, all of the slanderous attacks that we get. And so my main point is that if those things haven't, from a reasonable English gentleman, if those things haven't made me relinquish my faith, then my question is to the people, well, are you not thinking, why is that? Well, again, you have to look into the variety of things that come into most people, right? It's the news we're fed, the propaganda we're given, the lives that we lead. Is everything has to be so black and white. Everything has to be so like, Muhammad married a child, he's a pedophile. It's like, well, hold on a second. Like I've spoken earlier on in this, Salaam alaikum, slave of Allah. May Allah reward you for being on the live stream. So my point is that I've been thrown off now. I've been thrown off because I know somebody is on the stream. I'm going to read the comments. You know what I'm like. There's 3 people listening. I'm going from one thing to another. I'm just live streaming it up, living the good life. I appreciate Mr. John Bennett saying that there's no problem against yourself or Muslim people. But this is the reason why we need to bring down the veil and allow people to understand more than the propagandist narrative that's being pushed. The grade 101 from Morocco says their grandparents were banned from England pubs a couple of decades ago, and now they create English Defence League. Bye, guys. Thanks so much for being on the live stream, Adam. Salaam alaikum. The adhan of Isha has begun. Of course, so I'm guessing you're in Saudi. You're a few hours, Egypt or Saudi, I can't remember, a few hours ahead. We're waiting for Maghrib, inshallah, to come in ourselves and break our fast on what I believe is the 14th day of the holy and blessed month of Ramadan. 45 kids marry adults in US every day today in 2024, not 1400 years ago. Well, that's what I was going to say, is that one of the issues is that I can just talk about my own personal life. Like, for me, I hit puberty at a young age. Like, children, and this is not to condone, like, I don't condone child marriage in a modern context. Like in my country, England, bear in mind, again, as I've said 100 times before, the Sharia tells one to live by the laws of the land as long as they don't directly oppose the Sharia itself. And so the legal age of marriage in England being 18 is not an issue for Muslims. Like, do you see Muslims taking to the street to say that we need children to get married under the age of 18? No, we don't. But one thing that is a guarantee, because sex education in schools is preparing children for underage sex. Are we not clocking on to this, guys? That the UK education system is preparing children for underage sex. Because I had sex education in primary school when I was literally 10, 11 years old. When you're in years 7, 8 and 9, when you're like 12, 13, 14, you're getting taught about condoms and the word that still escapes my mind, that's like preventing people from getting pregnant. So the current secular Western school system is preparing children for underage sex, whereas we're saying get married before you have sex. So my main issue, my main contention is that as animals, as human beings, we have sexual inclinations and the sexual activity before the age of 16 and 18. That's just obvious. So what I'm trying to say is that what the best system for the prosperity of individuals in society is marriage. So, or abstinence, again, which is a huge part of what Islam is, sexual abstinence. If you can't have sex because you're not married, then don't have sex at all. Why is that? Is that just some like, strict, rigid, patriarchal, evil structure that's stopping people from, enjoying their desires and having fun? No, it's to stop all of the issues that we're talking about that are linked in with, dare I say, the council house system and all of these issues with, oh, wait, what if people have sex outside of marriage? Then they don't have family units. Then you've got also bare abortion rates, which is ultimately just killing children. Now, that's a separate topic altogether. But you can prevent abortion from happening in the first place, a huge amount of it, if you stop children from having sex. Because the main reason, let's be real, why people have abortions is because they don't have a decent, ready, functioning family system. They're thinking, oh, it's best for this unborn child to not enter the world because it only has one parent, or it's being raised in poverty. Well, what would be a really good thing to stop that from happening? To have both the parents being married, integrated into one another's families, and one of the obligations of the husband and the inshallah the future father in Islam is to provide for his family. One of the drives behind like productivity and development in society back in the day was young men, boys, we had to become something in order to gain our sexual activity. Now any man and his dog can go anywhere, children are having sex, adults are having sex, fornication galore. And now it's like it's the easiest thing to get whenever you want. And so it's got no value to it. And now you've got a load of like weak, useless young men who are absolutely lost. So my main point is that one of the beauties of marriage is that people have to work hard, be disciplined, have provision. You can't just have sex for free, basically, with no responsibility. With sex comes the potential for children. That's a huge responsibility. So therefore, people need to be responsible in order to have sex. And generally speaking, young people, that's certainly not them. So on to the next comments. Thanks so much for being on the live stream. Temporary backup from NYC. Big up your good selves in New York City. You're right. People conflate the actions of Muslims with the teachings of Islam. This is primary. This is fundamental. People conflating the actions of Muslims. Now, it's not for me to judge somebody's Islam and not obviously judgments from Allah, but I always view it with like veganism. If somebody's vegan, but they're eating cheese and fish, then at least during the period of time where they're eating cheese and eating fish, they're no longer vegan, obviously. So in the same way, if somebody is consuming mind-changing substances, alcohol and drugs, then or illicit zina, illicit sexual activity, then at least for that period of time, they are most obviously not Muslim. They have blacked out Allah. They have completely detached from the essence of Islam to engage in that activity. And look, we're all human. We're all fallible. We all sin. We all make mistakes. We all miss the mark. So when we make mistakes and then we come back and we repent to Allah and we say, Ya Rab, I want to become better. I want to be stronger. I've made mistakes. Protect me from any wrongdoing in the future. I promise to never do it again. And you don't do it again, then there should be leeway for mistakes. But certainly in the action itself, it is not Islam. But for example, some Muslims sell alcohol and pork, etc. Again, exactly. So it's confusing. I can understand why people are confused. Yet those things are forbidden in Islam. Absolutely. So, temporary backup, big up your good self. Yes, inshallah, come to the lower deck, aka downtown. So much disinformation against Muslims. Absolutely, I agree. America has the highest figures in the West for forced child marriages. India has the highest figures in the East. This is it. Like, the thing is, what you're looking at is you're looking at one unique, incredibly unique, historical, divine case of somebody of a young age marrying somebody of an old age. But bearing in mind that Aisha is not a normal person. This is one of the greatest scholars in Islam. Something, again, that completely derails the narrative of women, the exploitation of women in Islam. Well, why is it that one of our greatest scholars was a woman? Why is it that in the Islamic world, women had so many rights before the West? So I don't really want it to be like this, like Muslim world against the Western world, and this bumping of heads, because that doesn't really seem to be necessarily incredibly contraception. The grade 101 has hit the nail on the head. That's what I'm talking about. Contraception, in the vast majority of cases, is nothing but a detriment to society and individuals. I don't have a TikTok channel yet. Inshallah, I'm going to get one. I'm just kind of getting my juices flowing because I have stuff to say, but sometimes I don't know how to. And I think, to be honest, the live stream is one of the best ways for me, because although I am going left, right, and center, up and down different ways, I'm clearly able to, alhamdulillah, talk for coming up to 70 minutes on the trot, and hopefully touching on some important things about the ills of society, drugs, alcohol, contraception, abortion. All of these things can be avoided with embracing the beauty and tranquility of Islam, accepting Tawheed as a reality, and taqwa is just the most important thing, I believe. That's just me. TikTok is two ways. You can have a conversation with people. Oh, really? Cool. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to get on TikTok, inshallah, and hopefully continue to speak to the good people. Like I say, the main reason I'm doing this video right now, and I'm going to continue to make videos and open up TikTok and open up other social medias and set up my website and just start to put myself out there more and more, is because I feel that me as an individual, the Anglo-Islamic gentleman, is a great example of an English fella who loves rugby, loves football, loves British history. I'm not this new age wokey, like anti-monarchist, anti-establishment, I'm patriotic. I'm nationalistic. I love this country. One of the great things about this country is, relatively speaking, compared to the next, all of the continent, all of the countries in Europe, is that the best place in Europe for Muslims is this country. One of the reasons that's the case is because of the Commonwealth, because of the empire, because of the fact we have a monarch who is the defender of the faith. A lot of Europe is so secular now that they take a far bigger issue with religion in general, but certainly al-Islam, because of its power and influence. So you need 1,000 followers to go live. I think you can buy 1,000 followers online for 5 or 10 quid. Not sure though. Okay, interesting. And then you can do the old thing where I'm going to get more cameras to have this, to improve my long-term quality anyway, to have multiple cameras, to have like an A cam and a B cam, but then I can also have one camera for YouTube, one camera for TikTok, and I can be streaming multiple platforms at the same time. So 4 people on the chat now. Big up your good selves. 4 likes on the video. It's approaching 6 p.m. UK time. We've got 30 minutes until we break fast here in the northwest of England. And I would love to have 5 people. Questions. Reason I'm here: Islam is the truth. Islam is beautiful. English geezer, gentleman, who is an absolute contradictory force to the old school geezers who hate Islam and are all for England, because it's 47 minutes left here. Beautiful. So we're in the same boat, roughly. Yeah, for us, I think it's probably like 32, something like this. I'm not sure. So yeah, what are we thinking? Because I've touched on the main points. Tommy Robinson, clout seeking, galvanizing support against something which is, he misrepresents Islam. He ultimately, although he touches on vital points, which is, let me talk about immigration, right? This is the other thing, because I'm with, like, the Douglas Murrays and Tommy Robinsons. I agree with a portion of what they're saying, which is ultimately that the UK leadership, the UK government, is a joke. They've allowed these things to happen. Multiculturalism naturally creates butting of heads. And it's in 2022, was it? A couple of years ago, we had more immigration into this country in 1 year than we did from 1964 to 2000 combined. 36 years of immigration in the 20th century, the latter half of the 20th century, outdone in 1 year. And so obviously that's going to cause friction. People who don't speak the language, who don't understand the culture, who come from war-torn countries, who are predominantly single males. Like, if people come into this country, they need to come with skills. They need to come with families. They need to be responsible adults. They can't just be like young kids fleeing war, not speaking the language. So my issue really with the immigration situation is the power structure at hand, is the elites, rather than blaming a load of Syrians come in, who should probably not be allowed here necessarily anyway, or if they are, needs to be incredibly monitored. It needs to be overseen. It needs to be understood that they don't speak the language. Let's get some ESOL involved. Let's get them supported. And then it's dividing, because People in this country, they're coming over, taking our jobs, taking our houses. That's the vibe. The problem is with this country, to be honest, the uneducated, lower socioeconomic demographics are so ignorant, are so... Yeah, they've got an issue with all sorts of stuff. So 3 people. Who is on the chat? Obviously, the grade 101 is here. The live stream is a 2-way dealio. And so just before I go off the live stream, because I've got 9% on my battery anyway, so it's either going to be iftar is going to be cooling, or the live stream is just going to cut out. It's going to be one of the two. But we're talking about contraception. Contraception, the main thing is for me, I want to get a t-shirt made. Become Muslim, get married, have babies. Because the issue is with this country that people don't like, and I'm going to just keep preaching this, is the replacement rate for the people who don't like Islam in our great country of England. Their replacement rate is below. They're below replacement rate. Their fertility rate is incredibly low. So the English atheists, right, in a few generations' time, like, they're slowly going towards extinction anyway. Obviously, the Muslims don't have this problem because they're strong families and they're more than willing to have loads of babies because great reward comes with raising pious children. So my main issue is that the whole system of the non-Muslims is problematic because you expect your children to have sex before marriage, which means underage sex because of the contraception, because of the pill, because of the condom, because of all this different stuff. So children are engaging in underage premarital sex anyway. That's being pushed in England. That's a big issue, as opposed to what would I want for my children, right? I'd want my children to get, don't get me wrong, not underage, not against the law, in line with modern lawful legislation, the normal narratives, but still young. In this country, the legal age for marriage is 18 in England. Now, I know people who have got married at 18. They've been married for 5 years, 10 years. They have families, they have money, they have prosperity. Allah has blessed them. There's no issue with me for that. But in our society, people don't get married until they're in their 30s. So everything has been pushed back. The first world problems of our society, the 21st century, means that people don't take responsibility when they're young. They can have a load of fun, they can do loads of stuff, rather than let's get younger people more responsible, more mature, ready to take the responsibility and a burden of a family from a younger age. That's what I'll be setting my children up for. Being a supportive system for them too. Like, the ideal situation is my son and his, inshallah, future wife are both 18, 19, 20, right? They're both virgins. They both pray. They both fast. They both give to charity. They're both educated. They're both on their deen. And they come together and get married and have children. Now, nobody can tell me, although it might sound like a fairy tale, this is a reality for pious Muslims, for mu'min. In the Muslim community, this is not uncommon. People come together, right? Man and woman come together innocently, right? Not being corrupted by Hollywood, pornography, propaganda, the school system, all this kind of stuff. They come together, 2 virgins. They're young, they're teenagers, 18, 19, 20 years old. They come together, they experience everything together, they create a strong bond together. Before they get married and before they engage in physical contact, their families integrate in one another. They get to know each other. They have meetings. They get to know each other. Who are we? What do we want? Where are we going? Let's lay it out. What do people do now? They go to a party. They get drunk. They have sex with a random person. That person becomes pregnant. Now, there's 2 options. You either kill the baby, get it aborted, which is legal, but obviously anybody in their right mind can understand that that is killing a potential life. Not ideal. That has to be done because of sort of fringe circumstances of disability or poor circumstance, then that's one thing. But we can all agree, how do we prevent that issue from arising in the first place? Well, the other option was you either get it or you keep it, and now you're having a baby with some random person who doesn't know your family. You've got no plan. You're probably not going to be together in the future. Now you have separate families. The dad's not in the picture. There's a lot, like, is this not so obvious to so many people? What is better? A strong, linked-in family structure that supports the young people in getting married for prosperity in the future generation. So that's one thing that is just like the most obvious thing in the world that is Islam and traditional conservative value, as opposed to this absolute brainwashing, new age, wokey, sexual liberation mentality, which people think that, oh, it's freedom, it's freedom, it's freedom, but nothing but problems arise from it. Sexual diseases, right? That's one thing. Sexual diseases, unwanted children. We need immigrants in Europe to fill the employment and pensions gap. Well, this is a good point. Like I say, again, because of the low fertility rate in England and the rest of the developed world, the Western countries, it means that, like you say, there's the birth gap means that we've now got an increasing amount of old people who are going to be dependents, people on pensions, people in homes, people that can't contribute to society in the same way they did many, many decades before, and a decreasing amount of young people, which means that the responsibility, the burden lies on who? Us, me right now, people who are going to be in their 30s and 40s and 50s who are working. So yes, that's the problem. To bolster the economy, they have to, as Nigel Farage says, we should be upskilling our people. But one of the issues with the English people is the absolute arrogance and absolute idleness that they don't want to be upskilled. They'd rather take their benefits, smoke their weed and live an easy life. You have to have somebody with a fire up their backside to come from Eastern Europe or come from the Middle East to come and want to work and do the jobs we don't want to do. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. So the English people aren't even replacing themselves. When two people come together, you need at least 2 children to replace yourselves, guys. It's simple maths. Now, the English people aren't even doing that. And bearing in mind that the Muslim people are doing that at such a high rate that, to be honest, whether people like it or not, this is the reality, is that by the time my child is my age, take Manchester, for example, right now. Manchester, I reckon, in my lifetime, and this is going to be the same in other major cities in England, Manchester, Birmingham, London, etc., I would not be surprised if these major cities in England by 2050, in my lifetime, inshallah, I live that long if Allah wills, these will be approaching majority Muslim cities in this country. Now, that's not some kind of sinister conspiracy, underhand infiltration of the Muslim people. It's because, shock horror, the Muslim peoples have strong families, strong morals and ideals, and they're having children. They're not only replacing themselves, they're increasing their numbers. So my call is to my people, the DNA of this country, of this island, the Anglo-Saxon, Viking, Celtic, British Islanders of the past, why are we not having babies, guys? Well, I know the answer to that question. People don't want responsibility. People want to go out and party and drink and smoke and live their good life and postpone things until they're older. But the issue with the birth gap, the issue with the lack of women having children is that 50% of women, from the age of 50% of women who are over the age of 30, if they've not already had a child, they will not have a child. And these are stats. These are objective, secular reports and stats. So it's not just the biological clock where women are going to enter geriatric. They're going to be geriatric after the age they're 36. This is also the reality of that by the time you're 30, let's say you turn 30 as a woman and you've not got a spouse, a partner, a mate, which I don't like any of those words. I like wife, husband and wife. What people say now, they say my partner is like, what that is, that's a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but you think that saying boyfriend or girlfriend sounds immature and foolish because it does, because you're an adult and you should have responsibility. So you don't want to say boyfriend or girlfriend, so you say partner. But partner is just a fornication buddy. It's just a housemate. You're living with this person. They're going to drop you at any moment things don't go right. And I've had this, I know this in my own experience, in my own life. If you're not married, you've got no anchor. You've not got this. The beautiful thing about marriage is that it's a third party that keeps the whole thing together, especially when it's done in the name of God. Most people don't get married now because it's just a bit of paper. It doesn't mean anything. We're already married. We live together. We've got a bank account together. We've got kids together. We're already married. Well, you're not married. You just think you are. But the problem is, especially if you haven't got a plan, people need to plan. With my wife, right? People are too romantic. Now, don't get me wrong. There's space for romanticism. Obviously, there's a need for it. But one of the big problems is that people don't look at things objectively because it feels a little bit cold. If you're preparing to get married, you need to have non-negotiables, which again, in this modern equality for all people, treat unequal people equal, all this kind of wokey nonsense madness, people don't just want to say, right, this is the way I view it is I'm on a port, I'm at a port, I'm at sea, right? I'm at the Liverpool dock. Right, and I'm going to go across the Atlantic to the new lands, to the Americas. And I'm saying, I've got my ship, right? And I'm looking for somebody to come on board with me, right? And these are my non-negotiables. This is what I want. We're going to have this kind of family. We're going to go to these kind of places. I want this kind of morality. I want these standards. These are my expectations. This is what I want. Who fits the bill? Now, I even remember speaking to my mother about this, and she's like, I'm saying, I chose my wife, right? And she's like, oh, but your wife chose you too. Well, yeah, obviously, but I don't really, right? Our lives, we are individuals, right? I'm only responsible for my actions. It's my consciousness. So the fact that my wife chose me as well is irrelevant to my frame of reference. I choose my wife. I chose my wife because I wanted A, B, C, D, and E, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, non-negotiables. This is what I want. Do you fit the bill? If you don't fit one of the, say you fit 4 out of 5, then instantly, I can just diffuse that potential marriage, put them to one side and find somebody more suitable. But now what we do, like I say, in the example of go to a party, have sex, getting pregnant, she doesn't want to get an abortion, so you end up attached to them. And then you realize, right, then you're compromising your non-negotiables, which funnily enough are non-negotiable. So there's just endless issues with intersexual and personal dynamics that people don't realize that's leading to loads of problems that are on the horizon. Absolutely, we need immigrants in Europe to fill the employment and pensions gap because the English people, generally speaking, and I don't mean to generalize here, obviously a lot of people are hardworking, but there is somewhat of a vibe of ignorance, laziness, but then also complaining when you've got some Ghanaian auntie who's cleaning the toilets, you've got some Romanian fella in the factory, and you've got some Polish fella doing construction. They've come to take our jobs. Well, why don't you get your hand in the toilet, mate? Why don't you go up to the top of the building and start doing the construction work rather than sitting on your backside smoking weed and being a drain on the system because you've got a load of kids who come from different baby mamas? So there is a solution for racists. Perhaps they can ask white people from South America, North America, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand to return to Europe to fill the gaps. Yeah, but often a lot of these places, there's better quality of life. England's going down the drain, man. I'm out of this country, bro. I'm out of this country, guys. The cost of living is going up. The safety is going down. This is something I'll talk about. I'm on 5% battery now, so I will be ending soon enough. But thank you so much for tuning in. The old school vibe of our parents and grandparents of work a job, be a good guy, work your 9 till 5, have 2 holidays a year, buy your house, have a car, all that stuff is dead in the waters. The gap is closing, disparity of wealth is increasing. People have to work 2 jobs now to have half as much as they used to. We're being absolutely sold a lie. The system is a joke. I left England for the same reasons. This is what I'm saying, man. Morocco is a great place to be. And my intention, inshallah, is to book after Ramadan finishes, to book one-way flights for myself, my wife, my son. We're going to Egypt one way. We're going to sort out our situation there. Get a little bit of vibe of the Muslim world. Hear the adhan going off, loudspeaker. Can't wait for that, inshallah. I used to live in Manchester too. Wicked. Whereabouts did you live? Yeah, Manchester's wicked, man. Like I said, I grew up in the countryside, but I think Manchester is awesome. So many masajid, great Muslim community, great place for work, great location for so many places. Thanks so much for ending the live stream, guys. I'm just going to be cutting off Chiltern, not too far from Chiltern. When I first moved to Manchester, I lived in Withington, went to Waddy Rains, Hume. I'm sort of just off the city centre now. Chiltern's obviously a wicked place to be. There's not so many masajid there, but there is one nice little cute place that I used to go to. Right, I'm going to leave it there. The 3 people on the live chat, big up your good selves. Thanks for the suggestion for the TikTok. It's a no-brainer, I think, to start it. But my main thing is that, yeah, England is going down the drain. And anybody in their right mind should be moving to Africa because you get more for your money there. And Hoffend, yeah, man. Used to go to Hoffend Leisure Centre, do some runs around Hoffend. Thanks for the live. Thank you so much for listening. Are you Muslim? I am Muslim. That's just the person's name is Are You Muslim? Look out for these live streams and subscribe to the channel. Look at the community page because that's where I'm going to be releasing when I'm going to be doing live streams. I released a few pictures with a few comments on there. If you want to, no stress, no pressure, but something that I've just implemented. I got my first supporter for it. On my link on my channel, it's buy me a coffee. You can give us some support. I can do a live stream, maybe get a Cafe Nero and stuff. It's just starting in because my intention is while I'm in England, I'm living my job and stuff, but moving to the Muslim world, I'm going to be moving my employment online. And part of it would be awesome if, look, I don't want to be a millionaire, guys. I just want to look after my family. If I can make an additional stream of income through the YouTube and the TikTok and a website where I'm going to be releasing a t-shirt, become Muslim, get married, have babies, sell some prayer mats, this kind of stuff, then even if I can just get a couple £100 a month, it's going to make my life in Egypt, inshallah, a little bit easier. So on my homepage, you can buy us a coffee if you dare. May Allah reward you for it. If you wish to do that, TikTok is clearly a no-brainer. Shadow One, people instead of stopping Islam should focus on the downfall of Christianity in the West. Absolutely. I wish this country was Christian country. I wish they had strong moral values. And if they did, they'd realize that Islam is no threat and we're really just cousins at the end of the day. Thank you so much for being tuned in. I'm really gassed. I've got 5 people listening right now. It's a PB, it's a record. Next time we'll go to 10. And ultimately, remember to all the Muslims, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And anybody who's not Muslim, nonetheless, peace and blessings to your good selves. I'm going to go and get ready to break the fast. Big up your good selves.